This past year, 17.4 million people visited the websites of churches that they didn't actually attend. What this shows us is there's a lot of lurkers, people who are visiting church websites, clicking through pages, combing through the homepage, clicking on buttons. But for whatever reason, the website is not actually converting somebody from an online visitor into an in-person visitor on Sunday morning. I would guess a big part of this is because the hospitality that somebody might experience in person is not accurately reflected on the website. So if somebody visits your church on Sunday morning, they're probably greeted by having their hand shaken, somebody asking them, how's your day going so far? Friendly, happy, smiling faces. And again, if that warmth and hospitality isn't matched on the website side of things, you're probably not going to convert them from a website visitor to an in-person visitor. And one of the biggest ways to deter somebody online or to turn somebody off online is if your website is not mobile optimized. So before we get into the topic of mobile optimization specifically, I thought we might recap what is the 4-part framework that, again, we've used to help hundreds of churches reach their online objectives. It always starts with mission. So we start with mission because if you don't know what you're aiming at, you're not going to hit it, right? So this is setting very clear goals, measuring those goals over time. For mission, we go into messaging. This is basically what are we actually saying on our church website? Is the copy and the messaging actually communicating the right things about our church? For messaging, we then go into marketing. This is basically implementing good marketing principles, anything from an aesthetic or design perspective. And then again, from marketing, we go into meaningful experiences, which is what we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about today, making sure that people have a great experience on our church website and not a poor experience. Here's a couple of statistics that I think you might find interesting. This one is from explodingtopics.com. It says 60% of website traffic comes from mobile devices. 92.3% of internet users access the internet using a mobile phone. There are approximately 4.32 billion active mobile internet users. Lots of people using their smartphone, using their tablet to access websites, and they're probably accessing your church website as well. So you can just use your imagination if somebody's using their phone and they're not really having a great experience in your website because the text is too small or things aren't formatted correctly, or there's just something that just doesn't make sense in the mobile environment that might make sense in the desktop environment, you're going to deter that person from actually wanting to take the next step, to click on more buttons, visit more pages, and actually, in the long run, visit your church on a Sunday morning. There's one fairly simple 3-part formula, Viz, that we use for every single church website that we build. At the end of the building process, we use the Viz formula, basically before we launch it, to make sure that things are mobile optimized, there's no friction. And this is basically what the formula is. So again, Viz, V stands for visualize. This basically just means visualize yourself as the end user, put yourself in their shoes. We kind of have, as church leaders, as pastors, as website designers, we have what we can refer to as the curse of knowledge. We know too much. And so we have to pretend, what if we didn't know about our church at all? What if we actually were a first-time visitor and we didn't actually know all of the insider language that we as a church might be communicating? Put yourself inside of the visitor's shoes, the end user shoes, and think, does this actually make sense? So again, part number 1, the V in Viz, visualize yourself as the person interacting with the website in a mobile environment for the first time. So that's part 1. Part 2 is the I in Viz, which stands for identify. This is basically identifying any friction, any issues that you see as you're kind of combing through the pages on the church website via a mobile phone or tablet. What issues do you see? Is the text too small? Are there buttons that don't work? Is there something that feels wonky or clunky or hard to navigate? So part 1, again, visualize yourself, put yourself inside of the person's shoes that might be interacting with your website in a mobile environment. I identify the friction. Where is the bottleneck? Where is the pain point? Where is the friction as we're navigating through the website? And then the final part of the S is solve. So we want to make sure that we're actually solving the problem, implementing the changes, correcting things as we go. So again, fairly simple formula, might even be common sense, but again, Viz, visualize, identify, solve. That's something that we do at the end of every website build. We literally pretend I'm the person who's never seen this website before. Put yourself inside of their shoes, identify where are the issues, where are the friction, and then fix it, solve the problem, and implement changes so that you're actually not turning somebody off through the mobile environment of your website. Okay, so we talked about the Viz formula, but how do you actually practically do this? How do you actually make sure that every website page is looking the way that it should on every single breakpoint? Well, there's 3 main ways to do this. The first one is actually in your web building platform. So if you're using Elementor or some other page builder in WordPress, if you're using Squarespace, Squarespace, if you're using Wix, all of these different page builders give you the functionality and the ability to view what the website looks like in desktop, tablet, and mobile as you're building it. So this is one thing that at the end of the process, you can kind of click on each of those different breakpoints and make sure that your website's actually looking the way that you want it to look and that there's not any kind of friction, glitches, errors, or anything like that. The second way to view what your website pages might look like in different breakpoints, if you're on Google Chrome, you can right click and click inspect, and it'll basically pull up an inspector where it'll actually show you on the left side, this is what your website would look like in a mobile environment. You can even resize it to see what it would look like in tablet, and then again, exit out of it to see what it would look like in the normal desktop environment. And then the third way is just to pull out some different devices. Pull out an iPhone, pull out an iPad, pull out your MacBook Pro, and you can actually kind of comb through each page on those 3 different devices to make sure that things are actually formatted the right way, things look the right way, there's no glitches, things aren't too small. And we're going to be talking about in just a second what are the main things that you want to look for in terms of mobile optimization. But again, in terms of how you actually implement the Viz formula, the VIS formula to make sure that it looks great on every breakpoint, you can do it in your website building platform. You can do it using the inspector tool in Google Chrome, or again, you can pull out your actual individual devices and make sure that everything looks good on those different devices. Okay, so what are the main things from a mobile optimization standpoint that you want to watch out for and you want to look for as you're designing and editing your church website? Well, the first one is, and this is a really, really critical one that I think you'll see a pretty big ROI on, a pretty big return on investment if you implement this correctly, and that is hyperlinking any contact information from phone numbers to email addresses to physical addresses. You want to make sure it's hyperlinked, because if the majority of people are visiting your church website from a smartphone, you can imagine if you're driving in the car with your spouse and you're going through church websites, okay, what church should we visit? And they find your church website, your address is in the footer, but it's not hyperlinked. They're going to have to manually go to their Maps app, type in 5302 so-and-so street, so-and-so city. If it's hyperlinked with a click of a button, boom, it opens Apple Maps. They're headed straight to your church. Phone number, same thing. Click of a button, they call you. Email address, same thing. Click of a button, they're able to send you an email. So again, on a desktop, it doesn't really matter a whole ton. It does a little bit, but especially from a mobile environment, if people are visiting your website from their smartphone, then you want to make sure phone numbers, email addresses, and especially physical addresses are all hyperlinked, making it that much easier for somebody to call you, email you, and visit your in-person location. The next thing you want to make sure is not a piece of friction is your text size. So I know this might sound like a no-brainer, but you really want to have at least a 16-point text size on all of the copy in your website. Now, of course, this is just body text. Your header 1, header 2, those are, of course, going to be even bigger. But you want to make sure that your text isn't too small, especially on a phone. Phones are already smaller screens in general. And so if people are scrolling through your website and you have this like 9-point font or 10-point font, they're going to have to squint, they're going to have to zoom in. It's just more steps and more friction on your church website. The third issue that we see far too often is formatting issues. So something may look great in a desktop if it's right justified or left justified, but in a mobile device, is your text right justified, but then your button's left justified, or there's a photo right justified, but the text is centered? You want to make sure that it actually flows the right way. So maybe everything's centered, that would be okay. Maybe everything's left justified, that would be okay. But you don't want to have left justified text and then a right justified button, because then it just kind of feels wonky or feels like a mistake. Or another issue that we see all the time in terms of formatting is you have basically too much padding around the text, making a super skinny bar of text that is actually hard to read because there's only like 1 word per line or 2 words per line or something like that. So you want to make sure, again, that you're actually building the website out in desktop first, but then you're making sure that from a formatting perspective, everything makes sense in a tablet and then also in a smartphone as well. Speaking of margin, you also want to make sure that there's enough margin or breathing room or white space between sections. We see this far too often in mobile environments where on a desktop, it looks fine, but then you get to the phone version and the text is like right next to the dividing line of the section, or between one section and another section, there's just no breathing room. So we call this white space in the design world, but basically you just want it to be, it's more pleasing on the eye. It's easier for your eye to kind of read things and understand what's going on the page if there's a little bit of margin between one section and another. So make sure that your sections and your formatting and your columns and all of that stuff have enough breathing room or enough white space in the design. The next pro tip that I have is something that maybe not every web building platform will allow you to do. I know that using using a lot of different page builders in WordPress, you definitely have the functionality to do this. I don't know about Squarespace or Wix. You might have to use a little bit of custom code to do it, but you can basically turn off certain things in mobile or in tablet view that are visible in desktop view or vice versa. And so this is really helpful if you want to like have a banner or have something look a certain way in desktop, but then you wanted to feel a little bit different or a little bit custom or change some colors or fonts or something about it in mobile. So basically you're giving somebody a custom tailored mobile experience that they wouldn't see on the desktop. Or vice versa, where they're having a certain experience on the desktop, but it wouldn't make sense for mobile. So you're basically turning that off. So again, typically it's like a toggle switch that you can toggle on and off if you want this to show up in desktop or tablet or mobile. But again, giving somebody a custom experience depending on the breakpoint that they're actually visiting your church website from. So to recap, mobile optimization is a big deal. Your church website is the virtual front door to your church. You want to make sure that people are having a great experience on your church website and not a poor experience. And one of the biggest ways to make sure that that happens is making sure that your website is mobile responsive, mobile optimized. You want to implement the Viz formula when you're done designing your church website or editing your church website, that you're visualizing yourself as the person interacting on your website for the first time. You're identifying where are the friction, where are the pain points, and then you're solving that friction. Again, you can view each of those different breakpoints, mobile, tablet, desktop, either in your web building platform, in Google Chrome by using the inspector tool, or just by using different devices, pulling out an iPhone, pulling out a tablet, pulling out a computer, and then just combing through the pages, make sure that there's no issues, that there's no friction that's going to deter somebody from actually visiting your church on Sunday morning. Hey, not too long ago, we created a free resource for you, the pastor, for you, the church leader, called the Guide to the Perfect Church homepage. It basically includes the top 9 things that you want to make sure that you're including on the homepage of your church website to, again, get more conversions, get more people that are not just website visitors, but actually turn into in-person visitors on Sunday morning. If you're interested in downloading that free PDF tool or that free PDF resource, we'll include a link for that in the description. Remember, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Stay creative, and we'll catch you next time.